All right, let's dive into one of the wildest stories in cybersecurity. It's all about a researcher who spent his entire life hunting the internet's most dangerous criminals, only to turn his sights on the one target nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming: himself.
Yeah, those are the words of the man himself, Dancho Danchev. He wants you to know this was not an act of vanity. It was a calculated, strategic move, a final play in a very, very high-stakes chess match.
I want you to just let that sink in for a second. We're talking decades of research, private notes, sensitive investigations, everything. Just put out there for the whole world to see. It's like a master spy publishing their own secret diaries. Just boom.
So that's the big question, right? Why? Why would someone who built a career living in the shadows suddenly decide to step into the brightest spotlight imaginable? To figure that out, well, we've got to get to know the man behind the mystery.
So, who is this guy, Dancho Danchev? He wasn't your typical analyst sitting behind a desk. No way. This guy was a true pioneer, right there on the front lines of the digital underground.
Okay, so here's the quick backstory. Born in Bulgaria, he got a start as what he calls a hacker enthusiast. Basically, he learned how the bad guys think by, being in their world. Then, in 2005, he starts this blog, and it just blows up. It becomes the place to go for info in the security community, and that's what really cemented his reputation as a top-tier analyst.
And his main tool, his weapon of choice? It was something called OSINT. That's open source intelligence. He was like a digital Sherlock Holmes, an absolute master at taking all these little public breadcrumbs, forum posts, social media profiles, public records, you name it, and piecing them together to unmask criminals who thought they were completely invisible.
Now, his career was not quiet. Not at all. Danchev wasn't just writing reports about cybercrime from a safe distance. He was in the trenches, actively hunting down and exposing these huge criminal organizations. And as you can imagine, that made him some very, very powerful enemies.
To give you an idea of his dedication, look at this number. 2.5 years. That is how long he spent tracking one single target. He was relentlessly on the tail of this massive botnet, documenting every single move it made. I mean, that level of focus is just incredible.
And that target? It was the infamous Kubeface botnet. Think of it as this giant zombie network of infected computers, all controlled by criminals. It was an absolute monster, spreading like wildfire through social media, infecting millions of computers all over the world. And here's the key part. Danchev didn't just write an article saying Kubeface is bad. No, he meticulously mapped out its entire infrastructure, its leadership. He basically handed the world a blueprint on how to take the whole thing down.
His work also shined a huge spotlight on this rising trend called cybercrime as a service, or CAAS. The scary thing about CAS is that it totally lowers the bar for entry. You don't have to be some kind of coding genius anymore. It's like you can just go to an online store for criminals and rent all the tools you need to launch a really nasty attack.
So what kind of stuff was for sale in this digital underworld? Well, pretty much anything you can imagine. You could hire a crew to knock a website offline with a DDoS attack. You could buy brute-forcing tools to crack passwords. You could even buy a RAT, a remote access tool, to spy on someone's machine. He called it a data leaks paradise, and he exposed the whole rotten marketplace for everyone to see.
Okay, but you can't just shine a giant spotlight into these dark corners of the internet and expect everyone to thank you. When you expose powerful criminals, you don't just get applause, you get threats. And for Dancho Danchev, the price of his work was unbelievably high. This is where the story takes a really dark turn. In late 2010, he just vanished. Poof, gone. He sent this one mysterious letter to a friend, and then complete silence. The entire security community was on edge, genuinely fearing the worst had happened to him. And when he finally did reemerge, it was obvious that the threats weren't just online anymore. His work had put him in very real physical danger. So get this. On one side, he's getting threats from some of the most dangerous criminals online. And on the other side, a big wall of silence from the very companies he was trying to protect. Just look at his work on Kubeface. That thing was a plague on Facebook. And what did Danchev get for protecting millions of their users? He says he never got a call, no public thank you, no compensation for putting his neck on the line. Nothing.
I mean, can you even imagine the psychological toll? You've got constant legal threats breathing down your neck. You've got smear campaigns trying to destroy your credibility. And on top of all that,
You have the dreaming, constant feeling that some very bad people are watching you. And remember, he was doing all this on his own. He was an independent. No big corporation or government agency had his back.
So this all brings us right back to the beginning. Why leak everything? Well, faced with all this pressure from every side, Danchev made a choice. He decided on one last, absolutely radical move. He wasn't giving up. He was going on the offensive.
And this was his ultimate countermove, and it was brilliant, really. It breaks down into 3 parts. First up, preservation. By dumping all his work publicly, he created a permanent record. It can never be erased or silenced. It's basically a dead man's switch for his entire life's work. Second, he seized control of the narrative. By releasing it all himself, he made it impossible for his enemies to cherry-pick pieces of his research to twist and use against him. And finally, number 3, he turned his work into a community resource. He essentially gifted his entire archive to the next generation of researchers and journalists, empowering them to carry on the fight.
And where he published it was just as important as what he published. He didn't just throw it up on some random file-sharing site. No, he gave it to DDo Secrets, which is a nonprofit collective that's all about archiving this kind of sensitive data and making sure it can't be taken down. This wasn't just a leak, it was about building a permanent, resilient legacy.
So at the end of the day, the story of Dancho Danchev leaves us with a really big, thought-provoking question for the world we live in now. In this age of non-stop information warfare, is an act of radical transparency like this the ultimate form of self-defense? Or is it the ultimate risk? It's definitely something to chew on.